No, most of them don't, because they've been trained not to, and that's why it's so important for people listening to this program and aware of this information to really protect the wealth that they do have by investing in gold and silver and other precious metals. Why don't you tell people how they can do that, Mr. Chapman?
Well, I think the best way to get into precious metals is to talk to Midas, and they have a big collection of gold and silver coins and bullion for you to purchase, and they also will supply you with a free introductory copy to the International Forecaster as well. All you have to do is call 877-479-8178. That's 877-479-8178. I was on with Ted Anderson Thursday with Butch Pa, which was last night, and we talked about the availability and the things that were going on in the gold and silver markets. And there was one more thing I was going to bring to fore in the conversation regarding the descent of the dollar. And that is, I have been told by extraordinarily reliable sources, actually a half dozen of them, that, and I released this information 2 months ago and nobody else did, and the U.S. embassies have been getting U.S. dollars, which they are supposed to turn into local currencies. And I don't know in total how many embassies have received it, but I know at least 6 of them have. And I just had another writer send me an email this morning, and he said, I can verify what you're saying. So the government is getting ready for a problem.
Well, if they do dispense these local currencies, and let's say that they do actually have a bank holiday, what is it going to look like in this country?
Well, your ATM, credit, and debit cards won't work. Nobody will accept checks until the banks, reopen. I don't think that they're going to be shut down a long time. I think it will be perhaps 4 or 5 days. And I think it's going to be a trial run, a precursor to what they think is going to happen down the line when they have to shut them all for a longer, extended period of time, perhaps when they're going to do these multi-country, multi-currency devaluations. And
so maybe you think it's like going to be a beta test to see how the populace will react to not being able to get their money for a week?
Yes.
But if they do that, what's going to happen with when they reopen? Isn't that going to cause a bank run? And people going to freak out?
That people are going to be so happy that the banks are back open and not going to do too much. It's the behavior that they're looking for in between the time the banks are shut down and they reopen again.
So what you're saying is they want to gauge how much outrage there'll be, how much public outcry there'll be, but they also want to see whether or not they can convince those people who have that kind of an outcry not to take all their money out of banks and basically convince them that everything's going to be okay.
Yes, that's correct, and I think that you probably have the title to this, but this coming week we have maneuvers in the United States with Australian, German, Mexican, Canadian, and U.S. troops.
And UK troops. And private forces, by the way. But I know exactly what you're talking about. If you don't know what it is, it's National Level Exercise 09. It's going to be held in the last week of July. It's going to be starting, actually, the day after I get back from California. Totally and completely nightmarish. A total surveillance state is what they're practicing for, taking over all local governments, state governments, tribal governments, and much more. We're going to talk NLE 09 on the other side with Bob Dacey and Bob Chapman. It's the Alex Jones Show. I'm Jason Burmis, sitting in PrisonPlanet.tv. Folks, we are back at the Alex Jones Show. I am Jason Burmis sitting in. Joining me in studio is Bob Dacey, and over the phone is Bob Chapman. We're going to take your calls in the next segment. But I also want to remind people that we are documentary filmmakers out here, and our recent picture, Reflections and Warnings, an interview with Aaron Russo, is now available for free, folks, for free when you get yourself a copy of Endgame and some of the other great movies over at the InfoWars gift shop. And I want to remind people, my film, Fabled Enemies, if you want to know about the International Intelligence Agency that actually did carry out 9/11, we cover it from front to back in this video. Barry Jennings, the current Vice President of the United States, Joseph Biden, Cynthia McKinney, Michael J. Springman, Bo Dietl, and so much more. Fabled Enemies, go check it out. Now, we were talking about this state of the economy. We're talking about bank holidays and local currencies. Mr. Chapman, if the government starts issuing local currencies, what is the economy in this country going to look like, and what are we going to be doing day to day? I mean, how is that going to work?
Well, as I said, I think they'll have a large meeting, so to speak, and they'll decide ahead of time how much one currency is going to be devalued against another. Mm-hmm. And, of course, all of those changes are going to make all of those currencies degenerate in value versus gold. And so that's very important. But I think if they were to do a switch like that now there's a thing called the USDX, and it's 6 currencies, major currencies, weighted each one against the dollar. Now, the USDX is probably at the state that it's in now, you would probably see somewhere between a 50% and 70% reduction of the dollar versus that group of currencies, that 6 currencies. And that's one heck of a devaluation. But what would have to happen at the same time, there would have to be an adjustment of debt between countries, because 64.5% of all of the foreign exchange held by other countries is in dollars. Mm-hmm. So everybody's going to take a haircut if they do that, and I think that's coming.
Well, that is just, it's nightmarish. I wonder what happens to other localized currencies that are outside of government control, like, say, the Lakota rounds.
Well, they go up in value. Silver and gold will go up in value. Mm-hmm. If the value of the dollar, let's say, went down 50%, then we would assume that gold and silver would rise 50%.
But doesn't that put them in kind of a spot?
Maybe even a lot more.
But I understand that the rounds essentially would be worth more, but actually in those communities where they're using the rounds as currency, don't you think the federal government is going to want to step in and further regulate them? I mean, when you look at this exercise that you're talking about, National Level Exercise 09, is in FEMA Region 6. That means Texas, Arizona, parts of California, basically the Southwest, and there are Indian reservations there, and they state specifically in these documents that they're going to be going after state, local, and tribal governments. Basically, this is a huge federal takeover, but it's really an international takeover because, like you stated before, we're talking about governments in Canada, Mexico, Australia, the UK, and then private organizations also taking part.
Well, that's correct. And, we're just going to have to watch what they do because we don't know exactly what they are going to do. We have to learn as much from what they're doing as they do. Mm-hmm. And then we have to broadcast and let everybody know about it because certainly mainline media is not going to carry it.
That's right, and it's for a full week, and people really do need to arm themselves with cameras and questions if we want to expose this to the world via InfoWars and YouTube, Mr. Dacey.
I want to know from Bob, I have a question for him about this bank holiday thing. I mean, I'm a retailer, I have a local hardware store. How does that affect the guy on the street? I'm in the real world, mainstream America, real business, people getting their toilet fixed and getting their light bulbs changed and all that. How does that affect the average retail establishment during a bank holiday? What happens? You don't take credit cards or what? How does that play out?
Well, you can't because they won't function, and neither will ATMs. And
well, then nothing will function.
Well, that's true.
That's what everybody uses nowadays.
Gold, or there will be some establishments, I'm sure, that will accept checks incumbent upon the problem being solved. And, of course, government will say, well, we'll have this fixed in a few days, so don't worry about it.
But wait a minute, Bob, won't that also cause an artificial run on the banks if places start actually taking checks that are, say, post-dated to when the banks reopen? Won't there be just an exorbitant amount of checks that are post-dated for when this bank holiday ends, which could then, again, cripple these banks once more? I want to get your opinion on that. On the other side, we're going to be taking your calls. Tony, Rob, Matt, Darren, and more. It's the Alex Jones Show. I am Jason Burma sitting in. I am with the Bobs, Bob Dacey and Bob Chapman. Go check out the latest news over at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.tv.